Hey friends, it's Sarah from She's Crafty and She Knows It, and today we're going to be making some super cute fabric ornaments. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I have all my supplies laid out right now. Like always, I will link all the supplies I'm using in the description below this video. I'll be using a cutting mat as well as a rotary cutter to cut the fabric because it's very quick and easy, but of course you can just use fabric scissors if you want to. Now, if you're doing this with kids, do not let kids use the rotary cutter. It is really sharp and it's kind of easy to cut yourself if you don't know how to use it properly. As far as the fabric goes, I'm going to be using just fabric I already have on hand. And so this is kind of some boho colorful fabric that I thought would be fun to use. If you want to do more traditional Christmas colors, of course you can. But if you're like me and you have like a stockpile of fabric scraps, this is a great way to use them. As far as the ornament goes, I'm just using a 3-inch plastic ornament. You can use whatever size you want, but do make sure it's plastic so that it's not breakable at all. To put the fabric scraps onto the ornament, I'm going to be using the matte Mod Podge. Now, you could use gloss if you want to. It's just going to make it obviously kind of shiny. And I think for the ornament, the matte looks better in my opinion. And then I'll just be using a sponge brush to put the Mod Podge on. I have a couple paper plates to work over and put the glue on. And at the very end, I kind of wanted to cover up this silver topper. I didn't like how shiny and silver it is. And so I have some antique gold rub and buff that I'm just going to rub on the little topper hanger part to kind of make it look a little bit more vintagey and old and worn. So let's jump right in and start cutting the fabric. I'm going to move everything over to the side first. Okay, and so let me move this ornament. My strip is already actually 18 inches long. And so for the strips, this is specific for the 3-inch ornament. Now, if you have a different size ornament, you might need different lengths in fabric. But for the 3-inch ornament, I like to go ahead and cut 6 strips that are 9 inches long and 12 strips that are 4 inches long. So we're going to go and start that. I'm going to start by cutting, since this is already 18 inches long, 3 18-inch strips, and that way I can cut them in half and then we'll have the right number. Now for each strip, I'm trying to keep it at about 1/2 inch wide. If it's a little bit wider, it's okay. Try not to go smaller than 1/2 inch, but anywhere between 1/2 or 3/4 of an inch. And I'm not going to be super precise when I'm cutting this. This is kind of a fun holiday craft, and so I don't get carried away making sure it's like exactly 1/2 inch wide all the way down. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. Sometimes it gets wider, it might be closer to 1 inch, and that's okay. I'm just going to kind of go right next to it. And do one more. Okay, so there's my 3. I'm going to kind of scoot over and I can cut them all in half. So I have 3 18-inch strips that are each about 1/2 inch wide, and then I'm just going to go ahead and cut them in half so that I have my 6 9-inch strips. So they're right there, 6 9-inch strips that are about 1/2 inch wide. There's a little bit of variance in there. Like I said, they're not perfect. Okay, now we're going to do the 12 4-inch strips. I'm trying to see which side is more straight. I'm going to go ahead and just cut this at 4 inches all the way down. And I'm just going to go down and cut 12 strips. You can tell how it's kind of moving as I'm cutting, and so the strips are not perfectly straight. That is okay. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12. You can tell this last one got a little bit fat at the end. Okay, and honestly, I just have an extra. It left me with an extra, so I kind of have 13. So this might be too many strips. I'd rather have too many than have to stop in the middle of doing the Mod Podge and cut more strips. I just want to have plenty to work with. So I'm going to move them all off to the side, move my cutting mat. I actually kind of like having the strips on the right side. I'm right-handed, so it's easier to have them easy to grab right there. Now with the paper plates, I work over one paper plate just to protect my table. Of course, you could put like a garbage bag down or something if you wanted to. So I'm going to work over this plate and then put the glue on my other plate. So go ahead and pour some Mod Podge out on a plate. So all we're going to do now is glue the strips onto the ornament. So let me kind of show you. We're going to put Mod Podge on it, but let me show you the idea before we start going. Now, of course, I already kind of have glue on my fingers. If you want to wear gloves, you can wear gloves for this, but you don't have to. So the idea is you don't want to go too close up to the top of the ornament because the topper needs to be able to go over that. So just kind of butt up to it, but don't go over it. So kind of about right there. And then we're gonna go like this. And the idea is we're gonna glue it like this, and then the next strip we do, these are the little 4-inch ones, we're gonna go right across from it, almost as if it's one long strip. So you're wanting to do it like it's one long strip, even though they're not. Now the reason we're doing it this way, I know it makes it more complicated. If you wanna go fast, you can do all long 9-inch strips. The reason we're not is when I did all long 9-inch strips, it makes the center bulge and get real pointy. Let me see if I have one real quick. Okay, this is one that I did with all long strips. So I don't know if you can tell. It might be weird and hard to tell on the camera, but it has a big bulge at the bottom. It like really kind of made it a weird shape. It's not even quite fully round. It kind of bulges right there because of how many pieces are overlapping exactly in the middle of the bottom of the ornament. And so I like to do a bunch of these 4-inch ones, continuing them as if they're one long strip, but just leaving the center open. That way it doesn't make that bulge down there. So we're gonna go around and kind of space these like this, but they gotta be across from each other. You kind of wanna keep it consistent. So I do them like this, then we're gonna go in the other direction and keep going. So it'll make more sense once I start going. So I kind of just put a finger in the ornament as I'm working, and then just kind of paint some of the Mod Podge right on. You don't have to cover the whole thing first. You can kind of just do like a little strip at a time. And then you kind of just butt it up. I kind of grab it with my thumb that's right there, like this. And then I go directly across from it. So I kind of find, okay, where's directly across from it? And I come down on that side. Now, like I said, it does not have to be perfect. If you're doing this with kids, it probably would just be a lot easier to do long strips and let them go for it and not worry about the bulge at the bottom. If you're wanting them to look a little bit more professional and clean, I think this is a better way of doing it. Now, the reason we're doing the 1/2-inch strips is when you do the wide 1-inch strips, it kind of warps the fabric and it starts making kind of bubbles because the fabric strip, let me see if I have like, if you can imagine, this is just an extra scrap. If this is going down like this, it's hard to get the edge to all glue to the ornament because it's just too wide to go over a round piece. And so that's why we're doing the thin 1/2-inch strips, if that makes sense. Okay, I might have not done it perfectly straight, but we'll get there. Kind of move it over a little bit. Okay. So now all we're gonna do is kind of keep going around the ornament. So I kind of work in quarters where I kind of go back and forth. So like I did that, now I'm gonna go on the other side and do the same thing. And you're spreading it up to the edge of the top, going down towards the middle. And then you're rotating and going right across from the last one you did. These are still the little short 4-inch strips. The main thing is you want to have fun with it. So I like to, when I do this with my daughters, we like to turn on Christmas music and have like hot chocolate. And so it doesn't have to be too precise. I don't want y'all to get stuck trying to make sure it's like perfect. It's more supposed to be fun. Okay, so I'm gonna go back now and go right next to this one. And we're gonna barely overlap. So it's going to go right next to this one, but it's gonna overlap just a tiny bit. Enough to make sure there's no clear showing from the ornament. Like that. Okay, now we're gonna go right back and go right across from it as if it was going. So if it was going straight around, it would go on this side of this one. So I'm gonna put glue. I hope that makes sense. So you're just pretending like they're long strips and putting it where the other side would be. Just that way we're not creating this big bottom bulge. Okay, so that last one I did is right here. And so it's actually gonna go on this side of it. And so I kind of start there and then you can kind of flip it. And you just want it overlapping. I kind of want to get the most bang for my buck, so I like to overlap as little as possible, enough to make sure there's no clear showing, but not covering up too much, the same section. Okay, so that looks good. Now I'm going to go next to this one. So you can figure out kind of how you do it. Sometimes I do it and I feel like I have no rhyme or reason for the order I go in and how I do it. So do whatever seems the easiest to you and makes the most sense. But I save the long strips for the end so that it can cover the bottom and make everything look really finished and nice. Okay, like that. And now we're just going right across from it on the other side. So if it ooches and you can tell the ornament's coming through, just kind of ooch it over. Okay, I'm going to speed it up a little bit because I think you get the idea that we're just going around putting these strips across from each other, these little 4-inch strips. So I'll come back once I have all the little 4-inch strips on. Okay, so now I had an extra, I forgot I cut 13. So I have all of them on. This is 12 small strips. You can see there's 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12. They're all kind of in these quadrants with the big gaps. And so now we're going to fill in the big gaps with these other strips. So it'll kind of be like 2 there, 2 there, and we'll cover it all up. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure there's plenty on here. And these are the long ones that are just going to go all the way around. So you want to make sure you have plenty of glue on the bottom and all the places. I know I'm kind of going this one strip first, and so I'm going to put plenty of glue. Okay, so I'm going to start up here. I'm going to hold it with my thumb, just like I did last time. And I think I'm going to need 2, so it doesn't really matter where you go. I'm going to go like this, and then go straight up, just like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and go right over this same section. I can tell it needs another one. And you're kind of just rotating it to make sure you're covering all the spots. Just like that. Okay. Now, if for some reason it comes up too high and you feel like it's just too close to the kind of where the topper goes, you can definitely trim it down. I have some little scissors. You can kind of trim it. You can even cut it kind of on a curve. Sometimes it just barely needs a trim. Okay, and so while it's like that, I'm going to kind of smooth out the glue. We only probably need about 2 more of the long strips. So I'm just going to smooth out the glue so that it's not kind of lumpy. Since they're wet, they kind of ooch around. Okay. I think there wasn't enough glue between those 2 pieces, so that was kind of coming up. Okay, that seems pretty good. So let's go ahead and do the last little open section. Get plenty of glue in there. I keep calling it glue, but Mod Podge. You want plenty at the bottom. Okay. This is also going to barely require 2 pieces. So we're going to go ahead, do 2. Just like that. I'm going to overlap it a little bit with some glue so that we can fill that last little clear spot. It gets a little messy at the end with your fingers. You're definitely going to get on your fingers. So like I said, if you want to wear gloves, it does come off your fingers really easily. So I don't really worry about it too much. Okay, let's do our last little strip. You want to kind of rotate it. Make sure you're covering that last little spot. Sometimes I do this where I'm not sure there's enough glue over the top of this. So you kind of want there to be glue between all the layers. And like I said, if you need to trim anything, That kind of can be trimmed down. I just trim it with my regular little tiny scissors, and then I just wash them afterwards if they get, which they're obviously going to get Mod Podge on it, so just wash them afterwards. Okay, so now that we're at the end, you can tell my fingers are covered with glue. I kind of just go, you don't need a ton of glue on your brush, and I just smooth it out. Everything is covered. We have 2 extra long strips left. Like I said, you'd rather have extra long strips left than to be wishing you had more strips and your hands are covered with Mod Podge and now you need to cut. So just trust me on that one. You can tell the bottom looks so good though because it's not like bulging like that pink one I showed you, since we did it the little way with the 4-inch strips first. Helps it so much. So I'm just going through and putting a very thin little kind of coat, smoothing out what we have. You don't need a ton of Mod Podge on your brush, just kind of smoothing it out so that nothing's lumpy. But making sure that everything has plenty on it that it's going to really stick. You can tell this one strip is kind of like has bubbles at the bottom. If anything looks loose like this, I don't know if you can tell. I can see little air bubbles. I can tell this strip is like a tiny bit looser than it needs to be. I just kind of undo it. It was one of the very top ones and pull it up. And when I kind of stretch it and pull it up, you can see how much longer it got. So I'm going to cut that off. It just must not have been pulled as tight as it could have been. Okay. Like I said, we're just going back and kind of any kind of clumps. You don't want big clumps of glue. Now the little frayed ends don't bother me. If there's any frays that are really long, you can just trim them right now because this is how it's going to dry. Now this dries clear, so I know it looks kind of crazy right now, but this dries clear, so you don't need to worry about it. So that looks good to me. Everything looks covered. Okay, now I like to just go ahead and set it upside down like this to dry and just leave it just like that. So we're going to leave it like that to dry, and let me wash my hands and we'll come back and we'll do the rub and buff on the topper. Okay, I've washed my hands and I've cleaned my scissors. And so now I have a paper towel down and we're just gonna do rub and buff on the little topper. And for this, I am gonna wear gloves because you don't want the rub and buff getting all over your fingers. And so just put on a pair of gloves. Of course, this is totally optional. You can leave the topper silver. If mine had come gold, if I had bought gold, I might have just kept them gold, but I didn't love the silver, how it looked with the colors of fabric. So this is the antique gold, like I said, antique gold rub and buff. And the way, if you're not used to using this, when it comes, it just has like a little cap with a little point on it. You just unscrew it and this is sealed, and then you just use the point from the cap and stick it on there, and it punctures like a little hole. And so then once you do that, you just squeeze a little bit onto your finger, and I'm just gonna rub it. I don't need to use a paintbrush or anything. You just kind of rub it all over. That was more than I needed. You don't need a ton. It doesn't take a ton. Just rub it in all the grooves. I'm gonna kind of rub it on the wire on the top and just all over. And then you just let it sit and it'll dry and just have this nice little bronzy, vintagey look instead of being silver and looking like a new ornament. So that way, if you're making vintage inspired ornaments, the little topper looks vintage as well. It's kind of weird when you see like these really rustic looking vintage ornaments and then the topper is like bright silver and new and shiny. It doesn't quite look right. And so I think this is a fun way to kind of make it look a little bit more rustic or vintage. Okay, so now we just need to let the topper and the ornament dry. Now remember, the ornament has layers and layers of Mod Podge on it, so it is going to take hours for it to dry completely. But once it's dry, you can go ahead and put the topper in it and then add whatever kind of ribbon you want to use to hang the ornament from. As far as the ribbon goes, I like to use velvet ribbon or chiffon ribbon, but you could definitely use a plain ribbon or even something rustic like jute or twine. But I will go ahead and link some different ribbon options in the description below this video as well. Okay friends, so that's all there is to it. I love how my fabric ornaments turned out, and I hope you feel inspired to make your own fabric ornaments too. Like I said, I will link all the supplies I used in the description below this video. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and make sure you subscribe for more videos. Bye!
She's crafty and she knows it. She's crafty and she knows it. She's crafty and she knows. She's crafty and she knows it.